All right, so once again, in the last few weeks, we have another new UFC champion as Alex Pereira was able to defeat Israel Adesanya to claim the UFC Middleweight title. And in this video, I want to go over some of the technical aspects behind his performance and how he was able to get the win. But before I start, if you haven't seen my breakdown video that I did on this fight before it happened, make sure you check that out because I'll be referencing some of the concepts in it, as well as some of the reasons why I felt a slight lean towards Alex Pereira winning this fight. All right, so starting off here with round one and kind of fast forwarding through the first minute, that first minute where they were just kind of feeling out the distance, exchanging some strikes here and there. I want to start to get into some of the meat and potatoes of what Alex Pereira did exactly to start shutting down Israel Adesanya's offense and applying his own pressure. You know, a big part of Alex Pereira's strategy in this fight was applying nonstop pressure towards the fence, and he was faced with a few issues here, as you'll see as we go on. He had to solve a few puzzles. How do you stop Israel Adesanya's lateral movement side to side? He's very good at darting in and out. He's very good at switching stances and switching up his strikes. You know, how do you solve that? How do you solve the counter striking? And how do you ultimately slow him down to where you can land big power shots on Adesanya, you know, and land that big left hook and those knees and those other weapons that Pereira likes to use? So as we go on, I will show you how Pereira solved a lot of the problems that Israel presented to him and how he was able to ultimately impose his will. So one of the first significant things that Pereira started to do against Israel to stop his incoming attack was start attacking this lead leg with leg kicks when Israel would step in. And you can see just with this first kick alone, you can see that knee kind of buckle in as he hits it. Pretty nasty leg kick. And Pereira even doubled up on it here and walked him down and tripled up on it. And he also mixed in a high kick here up top. So already he's establishing this idea of going low and then going high to throw different attacks at Israel. But ultimately what he's really doing here is he's stopping the ability for Israel to dart forward, you know, unaffected. You know, he's attacking this lead leg. So if Israel decides to come forward, he's going to eat those leg kicks. And he's also throwing this high kick off the lead leg to not only give Israel something else to think about, but to also make him chamber this right hand. So when he's in an orthodox stance here, he can't just easily throw this power hand over the top. And it also gives Israel something else to think about on this left side, because Israel is typically thinking about the left hook from Pereira. We all know that Pereira's best shot, or one of his best shots, is that left hook. And you'll see how Israel game planned around that as we go on here. So right off the bat, attacking that lead leg, not letting him just come forward and throw strikes. He's going to run into resistance. And when he backs up, he's going to face an attack at range here with a potential high kick. So it's not just the left hook that's the problem here. It's also the potential high kicks. Now, credit to Israel. He also started to get the timing down, though, of this lead leg attack. So as Alex goes to step in with this to throw this leg kick, he's met with a jab right away that hits him and sends him back. Now moving ahead, Pereira also looked to implement his jab early and establish it, which would be a very significant factor later on, and I'll get to that. But here, you know, this was his first attempts at it in open space, and Israel was typically countering it with his own jab. So it wasn't entirely successful. It gave Israel something to think about, but he also put himself at risk of being countered, at least out here in open space. You're going to see later that as they get closer to the fence, the jab became more effective for him. Again, as Pereira would start to pressure him and look to throw that leg kick, Izzy would counter and throw his own 1-2 that would connect on Pereira pretty clean. So Israel was already picking up on the pattern of Alex wanting to attack this lead leg, and he was countering him with his own 1-2 over the top to back him up and to make him think about that attack. So it's a really good adaptation by Israel. Now the big story in this fight, and what ultimately led to the finish later, was Pereira's constant pressure forward and pushing Izzy towards the fence. He was always trying to push Izzy back, and rarely was Pereira on the defensive. You'll see him get turned around a couple times, but mostly it's Pereira just pushing Israel nonstop towards the fence. And also, Israel is comfortable in a counter-striking scenario, so that played into Alex's plan in a way. But early on, he tried to establish this pressure by throwing some strikes, seeing if he could land that left hook to back Israel up towards the fence even more. Again, we will see Pereira throwing a low calf kick here and then trying to come up high with a left hook. Again, applying pressure towards the fence. But as I was saying before, Israel was pretty good at darting out this way. And this is one of the puzzles you have to solve when you fight Israel, is how do you stop his lateral movement? Now, as they circled out, Pereira did a really good job at cutting off the cage. You're going to see that he always gets in front of Israel and doesn't allow him to take the center of the octagon or to continue circling out. Occasionally, Israel was able to get back to the middle, but a lot of this fight was dealing with this, where Alex is completely squared up with Israel and able to pressure him towards the fence and to keep him in front of him. You know, he's constantly cutting the cage, and that was a really critical element that I was wondering if he would be able to keep up with in this fight, because Israel's movement is so good. So the question in my mind was, can Pereira constantly cut the cage off to keep Israel on the back foot with his pressure? And if he can't, he's going to run into big problems. But he did a really good job at cutting the cage, and you're going to see that pattern as we move on here. So in this sequence, Alex is going to throw a high kick here to get Israel to try to back up. You know, the strategy is always trying to get Israel to go this way. He wants him against the fence. Open space out here. It's more of an even fight, but I would give more of the advantage to Israel because of his striking style, his movement. He's able to move more freely, and Alex is generally better in the clinch and in tight spaces, especially as a big power hitter. You know, you want to be in tight for those hooks. So if we go back a few frames here and you look at Israel's feet in relation to this logo on the mat, you can see how far back he goes when Pereira throws this kick. It makes him take a pretty good step backwards here towards the fence. So he's backing him up and getting more of that pressure just by throwing a more diverse range of attacks towards him. Now as that pressure builds and Alex pushes him even closer to the fence, Israel does a good job of firing back here with this left straight out of the southpaw stance that backs Alex up. But Alex responds by coming right back in. And this was something interesting that Israel did. So as they get close to the fence, Israel looks to reach with his lead hand and grab Pereira's lead hand to tie this up. You'll see this a lot throughout the fight. And if he can't tie the hand up completely, then he'll use it to gauge distance. He's trying to get a feel of how close Pereira is to potentially throw this left hook coming in. Now in this specific case, Israel pulls back towards the fence, but you'll see him start to reach for that lead hand again to gauge that distance. He wants to keep his hand on this, or at least, you know, have some sort of idea of what the distance is to either parry and deflect an incoming hook, or get an idea of when Alex is going to throw it by feel so that he can dart out this way. You'll notice that Israel a lot in this fight, he wants to dart this way away from the hook. He will very rarely dart this way unless there's a big gap in between them, and I'll show some examples of that coming up. Now eventually they got off the fence, and you could start to see Pereira adapt to the jab counter of Israel when Pereira would throw this leg kick. So as Alex throws this leg kick, Israel starts to wind up and lunge in for this jab, but as he throws that jab, Pereira anticipates it, and he's going to throw this high kick up top, and he clips Israel with it and knocks him off balance here. It wasn't a clean hit, but it was enough to where, you know, that shin hitting the forearm is going to hurt. It could potentially break an arm. And, you know, you do feel the impact on your head still, so it throws him off balance and makes him think twice now about that jab counter. So a really good response by Pereira. This fight in general was just so high level with a lot of the striking details going on that it was just really amazing to watch. Back in the center of the cage again, you're going to see Pereira throw this calf kick, and he's going to follow it up with something different this time. Last time he threw the high kick, this time he's going to throw a right hand lead. This is done to further throw off Israel and what he should expect, and it also makes Israel think twice about throwing that jab counter again. So Pereira steps in, throws the leg kick, steps back, but he's immediately going to come back towards Israel with that right hand. And you can see here that typically before, Israel was throwing the jab counter off the leg kick, but he doesn't respond at all this time. Pereira steps in with the right hand, clips him with it. Israel immediately fires back with his own left hand, and it gets deflected by Pereira. Pereira keeps his guard up high here to deflect it this time, and Pereira continues to pressure him towards the fence. So there's a really interesting chess game going on at this point. Alex has a strategy to attack that lead leg when Israel steps in to prevent him from coming forward. Israel adapts by throwing a jab when he does it, or a right hand. Alex then adapts to that by mixing in a high kick over the top, and then he also further mixes it in by throwing a right hand lead instead, which makes Israel stop throwing the jab counter. Now once they got to the fence, you're going to see Israel again start to reach out for this hand. He wants to constantly tie up this left hook hand. He has nowhere else he can go with the fence right behind him, so he needs to keep this arm tied up so Alex can't land one of his best power shots. Now you'll notice here too that as he throws this hand this way, Israel, if he's out of range for the hook, he's going to dart this way. But if he doesn't feel like he's fully out of range of the hook, he'll dart to his left, away from the power of this hook. Otherwise, if he circles right, he's going to circle right into the hook, which would be, you know, a potential knockout shot. So still being really close to the fence and Alex being in range to throw this hook potentially if he lunges in, Israel decides to go to the left. But Pereira does a really good job of following him here and continuing to cut the cage off. So here's another really interesting adaptation that Pereira throws in to deal with Israel's lateral movement. Israel continues to reach for this lead hand as we spoke about before to get a read on the distance or possibly parry or deflect it. And he wants to either go this this way away from the hook or come back towards the right if he's out of range of the hook. So one of the ways that Pereira can respond to this and shut off the exit this way is by throwing a kick on this side, whether it's to the body or a high kick, just something for Israel to potentially run into. So in this case, he throws a body kick that connects. Now this creates a dilemma to where Israel can either choose to go this way into kicks from here on out, or to potentially go this way into the hook. But now this exit over here is no longer free for him to travel without any type of threat. So as they separate here and Alex continues to pressure him, again, Israel brings this lead hand back up here, and he's going to throw his own lead leg kick here to try to get Alex to back up and stop some of this incoming pressure. And as he gets a read here of where this lead hand is at, Alex is not going to be in a great position to throw a hook because his arm is fully extended here. And Israel also has his lead hand here, which is going to obstruct some of the vision of Pereira, but also deflect this arm from being able to come up and throw a strong hook. It's difficult to take your arm when it's already extended and lunge in and throw a hook over the top of Israel's arm right here versus bringing the arm back, chambering it, and throwing a hook with full power. So what Israel's going to do from here, knowing that the hook's not a threat, is he's going to go towards the right this time instead of the left. So instead of dealing with a kick threat on this side, he knows for sure that the hook is not a threat on this side. Now Pereira does a good job again of cutting off the cage and keeping him on that fence line. But when there's this big gap in between them, Israel's going to continue to circle out to that right side because he does not have to deal with that hook. So from here, Israel does a good job of getting back to throwing the jab to get Pereira off of him, try to get some space. He's not as close to the fence anymore. He's got a lot of distance in between him, and he can start to move around a bit more. So Alex hasn't fully solved the issue yet of Israel being able to move and back him up out of range and to move laterally, but he started to put the puzzle pieces together slowly but surely. Now Alex continued to press forward in this round and pressure Izzy towards the fence. Again, Izzy reaches out for that hand. Alex goes to shut off the exit that way by throwing that body kick that he did earlier. And this time it's going to catch Israel in a bad spot here. He's in this corner of the cage where this ring post is at, so he doesn't have as much mobility. You know, the cage comes in at this angle, so he's stuck in this corner now. And that's going to allow Alex to load up on a left hook here that narrowly misses Izzy. That could have been really bad. That could have been a knockout shot right there because Izzy didn't have his guard up. The arm went right over the top, right towards his chin. Now, because the hook is traveling this way and Alex is going to have to bring it back to rechamber it to potentially throw another hook, at least with full power. He could throw it again, but it won't be at maximum power as this first hook. It's going to allow Israel to circle out this way, knowing that that full power hook isn't a threat. So he narrowly gets away from this hook, I mean, just by centimeters, it looks like, maybe an inch. And he's going to dart out towards his right, away from the hook. Now another adaptation here by Pereira. Izzy goes to throw in that jab to back him up, but Pereira adapts this time by throwing a flying knee, which barely misses. So these two are just having this back and forth chess game going on of trying to adapt, but Pereira is really picking up on the tendencies of Israel as we go on. Now here we start to get a hint of the effectiveness of Pereira's jab in getting Israel to the fence if he's able to implement it, and he'll be able to implement it more as the fight goes on, and that's going to be a huge factor in how this fight eventually gets finished. So Alex steps in with a jab here to Izzy's chest, and that backs him up all the way to the fence here. He's almost flush against the fence, and that gives Alex the opportunity to lunge in with a big left hook, which Israel is able to duck and also deflect with his guard up here, but it causes a clinch situation now. And from the clinch here, he's going to start to land knees. Now in the last video I did in the breakdown, there's a chapter in that video if you go watch it called Pereira's Sneaky Weapon. And one of the things that I noticed when breaking down his fights is that he sneaks in these knees and they can be super damaging. He's very good at sneaking in knees when he's either initiating the clinch or he's been tied up in the clinch. As soon as they clinch, he goes to throw this knee right here to the body. You know, it's going to take a lot out of you getting those knees crashed into you, especially when the timing isn't expected. When you first get tied up in the clinch, you may not be bracing for it, and he just crashes that knee into you. And if that's in between breaths and you're not bracing, that's going to hurt. It's going to hurt real bad. You know, it's going to take a lot out of the gas tank too. So as they turn around here in the clinch, he's also going to double up on that area that he was kneeing with this punch. He's going to start digging in punches to the body here periodically throughout this fight. And in the last video I was saying how if he can get into the clinch and get in close to Israel and actually close the gap, you know, that's the challenge with Israel, is closing the gap. These body shots from the knees and the punches could pay dividends over the course of 5 rounds. And another thing that Pereira does really well to create the distance for these knees is he uses his hand to create space. He'll sometimes put it on the waist here instead, but in this specific scenario, he's going to keep the hand on the knee in order to keep a big open space here for him to drive this knee up into his midsection and land the big body shot. Now eventually they separated and Izzy started to back him up with the jab again, And that led to this big moment here at the end of round 1 where Izzy stunned him really bad. And Izzy's going to throw a really interesting combination here. He's going to throw a 1-2, but he's going to throw it in a really unusual way. So he's going to throw this jab for the 1-2, and it looks like it hits Pereira's chest here. It's hard to see if it lands flush or not, but I'm assuming it made impact just judging by this frame and how it looks. But instead of bringing the left hand back to throw the right hand, he's going to do something interesting here. He's going to leave the left hand out here and then also kind of push it back up, which is going to obstruct the vision of Pereira and also screws with the timing. In general, you're going to expect the guy to bring this hand all the way back in order to lunge into the right hand, but Israel does something completely different here and leaves it up in front of his face, and that's going to allow Israel to lunge into this right hand, and there's only a millisecond to react to this. Pereira doesn't even really see it coming, and it just lands flush on his ear there and knocks him off balance. He was really rocked here, and then Israel lands that left hook to the chin, which rocked him even more. So, you know, if this fight goes on 10-15 seconds more, there's a really good chance it could have ended here. Now, looking at another angle of this, he throws the jab out here, and he's going to pull down on this arm, which is Pereira's guard against this incoming right hand. So he pulls down on it, and then after he pulls down on it, he's going to bring it back up. So it's obstructing his vision, and the timing, like I said, is just weird. You expect the fighter to pull it back, but he's not. He's just leaving it there. But that allows him to mask this incoming right hand by obstructing his vision and throwing it over the top and landing flush on his ear here. So it's really weird. At the end of round 1, after being rocked by Adesanya and being saved by the bell, essentially, it mimicked their first fight in kickboxing where Pereira got rocked by Adesanya and the standing 8 count allowed him to recover and stay in the fight. Moving on to round 2, right away, Pereira started putting on that pressure again and looking to pressure Izzy into the fence after finding some success with it in round 1. But again, you start to see Israel use this lateral movement. Again, when he's out of that hook range, he moves right. But in this case, he started to stutter step back and forth and to try to make Pereira think about, you know, am I going right? Am I going left? And to throw him off. Israel continued to use that jab to try to back Pereira up and dart out to the side, but Pereira wasn't biting on it as much. And if it didn't land, Pereira stayed in pretty tight and continued to pressure him towards the fence. You know, this whole time Izzy's on the fence as he darts back and forth. So at one point, Alex goes to step in to attack to try to corner Izzy, but he's met with a knee here as a good counter by Adesanya. And Adesanya darts out to the left. So anticipating Israel to potentially reverse direction and go back this way like he's been doing this whole round, going back and forth, Alex is going to throw a wheel kick here. So this was an interesting attack because, again, it shuts off the potential exit this way now because Israel might run into a huge kick. Again, Alex is primarily using the kicks against the fence to shut off exits either way and to try to slow down this lateral movement from Izzy, which is one of his biggest strengths. Again, on the fence, we see Israel start to extend his arms to get that range and then to dart out to the side. So Israel's getting tough to track down here. He's constantly in and out with that movement, doing exactly what he should against a pressure fighter like Pereira. Or I shouldn't say that Pereira's a pressure fighter necessarily. He can do either one. He can counter strike or he can apply a lot of pressure. It just depends. He's just elite. You know, he can do either one. But in this fight, he's applying a lot of pressure. So this is where Pereira really started to hone in the difference maker here to slow down this lateral movement. Again, he's already established the kicks to shut off exits, but now he's going to start throwing the jab to back Israel up directly. As you can see, when he throws that jab, Israel goes all the way to the fence. He can't even go any further here, and that's one way to start backing him up without telegraphing it with big winding kicks or anything like that. The jab's going to be able to get there a lot faster and make Israel back up. So like earlier, now Adesanya gets stuck in this corner of the cage, which is a really bad area to be stuck in when you have someone throwing big hooks like this. And this one actually connects this time. But Israel's got a great chin and he's able to survive it. And as Alex recovers from the hook, Israel starts to dart away towards his right. Now Israel does the right thing and immediately goes on the offense. He throws a jab, he starts throwing leg kicks, he throws high kicks, just throws a variety of things to start to get Alex to back up off the pressure. He wants to relieve some of that pressure and get Alex going backwards after all this nonstop pressure going towards the fence and all the cage cutting, forcing him towards the fence. But the problem here is that Alex's pressure is relentless. He never stops going forward. He keeps pushing towards the fence, and his skill level is elite enough to deal with Adesanya's striking in a way that Adesanya does not necessarily have the advantage. He's battling more of his equal rather than someone that's lesser than him, which, you know, typically tends to be the case, at least in the striking department with Israel's opponents. He's typically better strikers than most of his opponents, but this fight's different, so it makes the pressure that much worse. So again, Israel's keeping this lead hand out to try to establish distance, but as he starts to dart out laterally, Alex chases him, and he's going to throw a hard jab here, and this one connects really hard. You can see it just snap his head back, and that's going to send Israel towards the fence and starting to dart back out this way. But this was the real difference maker here in closing the distance. Once Pereira started fighting this jab, it really sent Izzy back into the fence and slowed down a lot of that lateral movement. Again, Izzy's going to try to get out of here with lateral movement, but Pereira's going to throw this jab straight at him again, but this time hitting him in the chest, but it sends him back into the fence again and slows down that movement from side to side. And from here, you're starting to see a pattern. Israel gets cornered in the corner of the cage. That allows Alex to step in and throw a big hook, but Israel's got his guard up here. It grazes him a little bit, but it traps him. And after getting trapped there after the hook, they end up in this clinch scenario again, where Alex immediately starts working the body with body shots, and then immediately starts to try to dig in a knee here. It gets deflected a little bit, but he's making this clinch nasty. Forearm on the throat, pushing him back, and just generally slowing him down. All of this together was a great strategy against the fast moving, back and forth, lateral moving fighter who likes to dart in and out and use a lot of his reflexes and athleticism to deal with incoming strikes and stance switching and things like that. By tying him up with clinches, throwing body shots, and jabbing him back towards the fence and reducing the space that he has to move, Pereira is effectively able to shut all of that down. Now, Israel was able to eventually turn him around towards the fence and throw in a takedown attempt here, or at least feint it to try to give him something else to think about. So this was all good by Israel. And eventually they break off the fence, and he starts to throw that 1-2 again that he threw earlier that was really effective. He throws that jab out there, kind of lets it linger, and then follows it up with the right hand and just nails Pereira straight in the chin. And for the first time in the fight, that gets Pereira towards the fence, but Pereira's really good at circling back out and continue to circle towards the center of the cage to start to take control over the pressure again and start to push towards Israel. Now right away, he starts to implement that jab again. He throws it out there, doesn't necessarily land clean, but it gets Israel backing up. Again, he throws it again, and it's getting Israel to think about anything other than darting out side to side, and it's shutting off the exit this way. And because of this jab and being stuck here on the fence, this now forces Israel into a fight that is more favorable for Pereira, at least on average, dealing with the power. It's going to force Israel into a firefight. He's got to defend himself here and get off this fence. So he starts to trade shots. And initially it backs up Pereira, but Pereira goes right back to the jab, which again gets Israel moving backwards towards the fence. Again, as Israel tries to implement that strategy, grabbing this lead hand again, Pereira's able to pull it back and to go right back to the jab. Boom. Right back to the fence we go. So you can see that this jab became a huge weapon over time into shutting down the movement and getting Israel on the fence. Once Israel was on the fence and he got cornered here by Pereira cutting off the cage, he had no choice but to shell up here with his guard, and it allowed Alex to just wind up and throw a hard hook that landed behind his guard. And that gets Israel in a firefight again to where they're trading punches, exactly what he doesn't want to be doing. And by now you guys know the theme. Israel's stuck in the corner of the cage by the ring post, and here comes the incoming attack. Gets hit hard by a hard jab, which snaps Israel's head back. He can't really do a whole lot here, so he just, he responds with a hook. But, Alex has the movement advantage here. He's not stuck on the fence. He's not limited by the fence. He can pull back and avoid it because he has all this space to work with. And Alex is just able to continue the jab onslaught here, followed up with a right hand, and Izzy's just stuck in this corner in a really bad spot. But you can see what the jab led to. The pressure plus the jab led to all of that. Stuck on the fence, cornered, eating hooks, eating right hands, jab over and over again, keeping him on the fence. Not nearly as much movement as we saw before from Israel. He was trapped against that fence and stuck in a lot more bad spots, all because of that jab. Now Pereira, again with that relentless pressure, steps in with a lead right hand, which drives Israel to the fence, and he tries to move laterally this time, but slips here a bit, and he runs into a bit of a left hook on his way out, and that allows Pereira to close the distance and immediately wind up with this sneaky knee right up the middle to his midsection again. They haven't even made contact yet, and he's already winding up for it. It's difficult to brace for this if you're Israel because of this. You're not expecting it yet. He's stepping in with it and just nails him right there underneath his arm, right to the ribs. Eventually they get off the fence and back at range. Pereira goes right back to that low kick, steps in with the high kick, giving Israel something to think about, and Israel's not able to retaliate with that jab counter that he was throwing earlier in the fight. And to end the round here, Pereira's going to pressure him towards the fence and duck here a little bit to feint, which Israel bites on and moves backwards. And the second time he does it, he's really going to duck for real and shoot a takedown here into the fence, pull him off the fence, and score the takedown, which was really smart on his part to score points on the round and also to mix it up and give Israel something else to think about. Now heading into round 3, Izzy looked to establish that 1-2 again, throwing that jab out there, letting it linger and pull the guard down, and then throwing the right hand over the top, which landed clean. Pereira was able to absorb the shot with the amazing chin that he's got, and then Israel followed it up with a hook, But eventually Pereira was able to circle back out and start to pressure Izzy towards the fence. From there, Pereira looked to utilize that leg kick again to the lead leg, and Israel went back to the jab counter, which connected, and he looked to follow it up with a right hand to back Pereira off. It didn't hit him in the chin and got him in the chest a little bit more because Pereira was moving backwards, but it allowed Pereira to reset here as well and to come back in with his own attack here, throwing this left hook that connected and allowing him to close the distance and to end up in a clinch scenario again. Now, one of the biggest moments in the fight happened here, and this was a game changer for the round as a whole. As they start to clinch here and Pereira circles around, again, he's always ahead of his opponents here in the clinch with these knees. Let me go back a frame. This is happening so fast. He gets this underhook on this side, and as he's turning, he throws this knee that catches Izzy by surprise. And the reason why I say by surprise is you could tell that Israel wasn't fully braced for this incoming knee. And as his knee hits him, you can see the impact as he just doubles over and goes kind of limp for a second. You can see his hand here is just on Alex's leg. He's not really fighting for any type of clinch scenario or anything. You can see the angle of his back here hunched over. Just a brutal shot. Again, going back a couple frames here as Alex brings this up. It just connects clean and he eats it. Now from here, this changes the direction of the round completely as Israel goes for a takedown from here to deal with this in order to recover. So as Israel comes back up here, he's going to push off and get out of this clinch scenario to try to get distance and to not eat any more of those knees or punches. Pereira recognizes this though and can sense that Izzy was hurt by this and immediately throws a body shot with his right hand, chases him down, and then throws a left kick to the body as well. Again, that's how you can tell that Izzy was really hurt by that knee to the body. Not only did he hunch over and go kind of limp from it, Pereira immediately followed it up with 2 more body shots trying to hunt him down as he darted out. And previously before that, we also saw Izzy typically stay in the clinch, try to reverse position, get control and things like that. But this time, he immediately separated and tried to dart to get spaced and try to get away and get out of the scenario. Now, as Alex throws that body kick, it allows his leg to be caught out there, and Israel's going to use it for a takedown. This is a really good idea by Israel to avoid taking any more strikes. And again, you can tell that Izzy was affected by this knee because this whole clinch takedown scenario is a bit of a mess. You know, he comes in for the clinch here. Alex is out of position. Israel's not exactly in the greatest position either. And they kind of collide into this clinch scenario where Alex goes to try to trip Adesanya, but Adesanya counters it nicely by rotating him this way, and that's going to allow him to come out on top. So again, not the prettiest takedown situation going on here, but a good adaptation by Adesanya, especially while he's hurt, to end up on top. And from here, he's able to ride the round out and to mainly control Pereira from the top, land some shots here and there. They end up on the fence. He drags him down. They end up in a scramble. He's able to scramble out of that. And he generally just controlled it on the ground. He was able to scramble when needed and to come out on top, to land some shots here and there, control him in guard, put his weight on him, a couple elbows here and there, and generally just start to drain some of the energy out of Alex. However, it also drained some of Adesanya's gas tank with all the grappling and the body shots that set up the whole sequence earlier on in the round. So in round 4, they started off by exchanging strikes at distance. Nothing of significance, but you could tell that the pace had slowed down quite a bit and they were both affected by the grappling. You could see that it had an effect on both of their gas tanks equally, and things were slowing down just a little bit. Now, that's not to say that they were gassed, but you could definitely see a downtick in energy. And Izzy looked to bring back that 1-2, throwing that jab and looking to follow it up with the right hand. But Pereira caught on, or at least started to catch on, and would pull away before he could follow it up with that right hand. Now, Israel immediately followed it up again, this time actually connecting with it after pulling that guard down and sending Pereira back. Again, if we go back a few frames here, you can see that Israel extends that lead hand, not throwing it as a fully committed jab, but extending it to pull down on this guard and to throw that right hand over the top. So a slight modification to the 1-2 that he was throwing earlier, but generally the same principle of that lead hand extending to pull the guard down and right hand over the top. Now, like most rounds, Pereira was able to start getting Izzy towards the fence. And as they got closer to the fence, Izzy started extending that lead hand again, probing for that left hook. And as Pereira got him squared up against the fence, Pereira looked to start throwing the jab to the body here instead to try to drop Izzy's guard, because Izzy was doing the right thing, keeping his hands up high in case those hooks started coming in. So Pereira responded by throwing body jabs to try to get him to drop his hands. And sure enough, as Israel goes to throw this jab, Pereira counters by throwing a left hook, but Izzy was smart and stayed disciplined here with his defense, keeping his hand up. And like earlier, as this hook comes by traveling this way, this allows Izzy to start moving to his right, and here he also obstructs his vision here to prevent any follow-ups as he circles out. But again, look at Pereira right away on the cage cutting directly in front of him, and he didn't allow Izzy to go very far. You know, he got off the fence a little bit and moved a little bit towards his right, but Pereira's right there in front of him again. And like earlier, he's right back on that jab to try to get him back towards the fence. No more lateral movement being allowed. Just more jabs to try to get him back on that fence. And Izzy tries to go this way instead to deal with it. Now trying to get off the fence, Izzy goes back to that 1-2 again. Throws the jab, lets it hang there, trying to obstruct the vision. Right hand over the top, comes up short this time, and he's immediately going to follow it up with another one. He goes to step in, throws the jab out there, leaves it hanging there, right hand over the top, but Pereira's got the timing, and he's continuing to move backwards with these attempts. So this one's going to clip him a bit, you know, it hits him in the head here, but Pereira's also moving backwards, which is going to take a little bit of the sting out of it. So in general, Pereira is catching on to this 1-2 and the timing of it and how Israel's using it and the success that he found with it earlier in the fight. And Israel's looking to recreate that success that he found earlier in the fight when he rocked him in round 1 by trying to hit him with that 1-2 over and over again. And you see him really start to rely on this combo as they got more tired after the grappling. You know, you can tell that Israel wants to land this shot and do damage and hopefully end this fight. Now to Izzy's credit, at one point he was able to start to get Pereira on the back foot going towards the fence, throwing kicks at him and kind of using Pereira's strategy against him and getting him backing up and throwing his own attacks here, finally pushing Pereira back instead of being the one always defending against the pressure. There was a good left hook there, gets Pereira backing up, but Pereira in general is really good at circling back out when he's pressured and getting back towards the center of the cage where he can reset and try to establish his own pressure again and become the aggressor once again in the fight. However, at this point in the fight, you could see that Israel was starting to gain a lot of momentum. He was landing some good leg kicks. He was generally throwing a lot more volume than Pereira, who was largely recovering after that heavy grappling round. Izzy was stepping in, throwing shots. You know, he lands this left hand here, and he was generally looking pretty good. Lands the jab here, and Pereira starts to pressure him again. And this is where things started to go bad for Israel. I think this is where the ultimate mistake happened in the fight. He goes to feint a takedown here, and he'll back up. He extends his hands here to gauge the distance, and he looks to get a snatch single here. Now, I don't know how committed he was to this takedown. I don't know how bad he wanted it, but it gets broken up fairly easily by Pereira. Pereira just pulls back a bit, not even in a full sprawl or anything, but that breaks up the takedown attempt, and it causes the clinch situation to happen. Now, I didn't like this for Adesanya because he was doing good at range. He was landing strikes, he was mixing it up, he wasn't taking damage, he wasn't having to carry Pereira's weight in the clinch or deal with those knees, but instead, by reaching down for that snatch single, it got him back in a clinch scenario again. So as they clinch up here, Adesanya is going to look to try to trip him, or at least feign the trip, and off that trip attempt, he's going to bring his hand down here for the knee pick attempt to hopefully drive him this way while blocking the knee and attempt to get the takedown. But both attempts fail, and instead they end up clinched up on the fence. Now from here, they start to battle for position in the clinch, and Adesanya is fairly inactive in the clinch aside from the wrestling and, you know, upper body clinch battle going on here. He's not really throwing any strikes or looking to attack. So this allows Pereira to start to snake this hand on the inside and start to open up this space. Again, you know, we have that incoming knee threat now from him pushing on the waist here or on the hip line here. So that allows him to start backing his hips up, and now look how much space we have. And again, Adesanya is just holding on to this body lock, which is going to allow Pereira to start to step in with this leg and start to throw this knee up. And now he's eating body shots again in the clinch. Now, another thing that Pereira does really well here in the clinch is that he'll track this arm so that Izzy can't punch with it or throw elbows. And that allows him to also move it out of the way to throw knees. So you'll see him open up this gap, and you can already see this knee starting to come up as he throws it and hits him again in the midsection. More body shots. Now Izzy does the right thing from here. He gets out of this clinch after just absorbing body shots and not landing any of his own strikes, and he starts to throw his own shots here along the fence. But the downside here is that he's engaged in a firefight. You know, Pereira strikes back, hits him with a right hand, and now they're trading blows. And in my opinion, Izzy's a great striker overall. He can trade shots, he can firefight, he can hit you at distance and at range and everything. But I think he's at his best when he's at range, sticking and moving. And why deal with the strikes on the inside of a big, powerful guy like Pereira when you don't have to, you know? So again, that attempt at the snatch single set up this entire thing to where he got clinched, knee in the body, and ends up in a firefight on the fence when he was more effective at range prior to that, hitting him at distance and not taking any damage in return. Izzy continues to stay in range here, and Pereira hits him with a nice jab that backs him up, and you know, it just gets him moving backward towards the center of the cage where Pereira can start to pressure him towards the fence again and reestablish control. And again, this all started off that snatch single attempt. You know, it's crazy how just one takedown attempt or even feigning the takedown attempt can lead to all of this. And with the momentum from that jab and pushing Izzy back towards the fence, you know, Izzy's getting pressured again, backed up even more. And here comes Pereira with another jab as he steps in here and has Izzy flush against the fence at this point. So he eats this one and his head snaps back into the fence, hitting the post there even a little bit. And, you know, Izzy tries to circle out towards his right, but immediately Pereira cuts him off. And as you guys know by now, when Izzy gets towards this post and Pereira's got him cut off, what does he do? He attacks. Big right hand, boom, lands, hits him more in the chest, follows it up with a left hook, grazes him. But, you know, in general, Izzy now is involved in these firefights and defending these huge shots on the fence, when he should be out at distance and out at range like he was earlier in the round. Now we're also starting to see a pattern that as the fight goes on and Israel takes damage, he looks to start to shoot takedowns or at least feign the attempts. So as Pereira steps in here to throw a left hook, Izzy ducks underneath it, looks to shoot the takedown, but Pereira blocks it and they end up in a clinch again. But Pereira, you know, immediately right back on these body shots, making him pay for clinching. Israel's able to turn him around towards the fence, but again, Pereira with this hand creates space, pushes on that thigh, and he's going to bring this knee in, steps into it, bam, midsection, again, body shots. Every time Israel clinches, he pays for it with these body shots over and over again. Pereira follows it up by punching his body, hitting that same spot over and over and over again. And how does Israel respond? He looks to try to trip him and take him down, but the attempt fails, and they end up clinched up again with Israel in more of this body lock defensive position again instead of attacking. Now eventually they break out of the clinch, and in the last few seconds of the round, Pereira pushes Izzy towards that fence again and steps in with a hard left hook. Izzy does the right thing and has his guard up again, but it's going to go behind his guard and hit him here in the chin and just nails him. You can see his body go to the right here, and he follows it up with that right hand, hitting Izzy again, and he takes some really hard shots here. And to me, it looks like he was dazed, but, you know, he was able to recover here pretty quickly at the end of this round. But Pereira definitely landed some good shots in the clinch and there against the fence. Now, one more note about this sequence that was interesting, and it's another parallel to their previous fights, is that in their second fight when Israel got knocked out, he got knocked out after switching stances in transition. And in this scenario, he also switched stances. So he starts off here in orthodox. He switches southpaw. You can see that his right hand is now his lead. And shortly after that, you know, he squares up his stance. Pereira throws this left hook. Israel's defending it, and the punch goes behind his guard and hits him in the chin, and he follows it up here with a right hand. Now, it's similar to their second fight in the sense that Israel switched from orthodox to southpaw, but the combination was reversed on Pereira's behalf. He threw a right hook into a left hook in that fight, and in both fights, Israel had his guard up defending that incoming left hook preemptively, but in the kickboxing fight, the shot went in front of his guard and hit Israel in the chin, and in this fight, it went behind the guard and hit him in the chin. So really interesting parallels here between the two fights. Now heading into round 5, Pereira's corner told him that he needed to finish this fight, and he responded accordingly by applying a lot of pressure right off the bat. And this is exactly what he did too in their second kickboxing fight when he came out putting a lot of pressure on Izzy. You know, a lot of elements of this fight mimicked their kickboxing matches in a way that was almost eerie. So right away, he comes out pressuring Izzy to the fence. Izzy responds with some body kicks and some strikes. Pereira keeps pressing on like a machine and gets Izzy on the fence. He immediately starts to look to utilize that jab to back Izzy up into the fence. He knows that's the successful tool to get Izzy going backwards and to kill a lot of that movement. Follows it up with a right hand, just constantly pressing him into the fence. Again, we're in the corner of the cage again here, the danger zone. Left hook to the body, just making him eat those nasty body shots. He's putting everything together that he discovered throughout the fight. He's putting the puzzle pieces together on what is going to ultimately lead to the finish. Izzy looks to clinch here, and normally Pereira would engage and throw knees, but not this time. He's going to also block this incoming knee. Israel looks to mix it up and throw a knee of his own, but if we go back a couple frames here, Pereira looks to jam this elbow here in between them, and it's going to block a lot of that force coming from that knee. And Pereira's going to throw a body shot on this right side here, just constantly working that body anytime they're in close, whether it's punches or knees, always making him pay. Digs in that body shot on the right side, and as they start to clinch, you know, Izzy, again, after taking that body damage, what does he do? He looks to try to trip him and at least feign the takedown here, but, you know, it's a futile attempt, and Pereira's able to break it up and break out of the clinch. and he's got Izzy on the back foot again. Right away, he continues that high pressure, throws a jab, gets Izzy backing up. Closer and closer to the fence they get. Fast forwarding a few seconds here on the fence, Pereira steps in with a nasty right hand that connects, and just keeping Izzy on this fence line the whole time. They clinch up from here, and it's the same old story again. Pereira gets control of this hand here on the side, as he usually does. They start to separate a little bit. He pushes Israel away to create some of that space, and boom, drives that knee in again. Israel responds by driving him into the fence, and again, just kind of in a defensive posture, leaning into him with a body lock. Nothing really offensive going on. Kind of stalls here, and Pereira throws his hands up like, Israel's not doing anything here. From here, he gets this inside bicep tie, and he's going to use this open space to swim his arm through to get an underhook and to start to push Israel away. He's not wanting to engage in the clinch here because he needs a knockout. It makes a lot more sense for Israel to try to clinch and to stall. So he pushes Israel off of him back into open space and continues to pursue. Now, this was a really unfortunate moment for Israel. He looks to throw a leg kick here, and it's going to hit Pereira right here in the knee, high shin area. And according to Israel, it messed up his peroneal nerve, or it sent a shock through his leg or a dead leg, because he steps back here and you can tell that it affected his leg really bad too. Look at his legs crossed up here. Like, he doesn't have great control or feeling over it. There was a neural effect there for sure. Definitely some type of effect to the nerves from that checked kick. And he falls back, and he does the right thing here as he falls down. He's not able to catch himself. So instead of sitting here and ending up on his back and having to play guard with Pereira on top, he rolls with it the best that he can. That was the best thing that he could do in that scenario, to at least give himself the option of defending some strikes. But Pereira does the right thing and catches him with a right hook and intercepts him as he comes up and backs him to the fence. Now, Pereira responds here by throwing a knee as Izzy ducks, and it just narrowly misses his face, but still catches him in the body. Still a hard shot to eat there as Israel circles out this way. Now, Alex continues to pursue him until he gets to the corner of the cage. And what happens in the corner of the cage? Alex throws a jab to the body here to try to lower his guard, makes him eat the body shot, presses him into the fence, follows it up with a right hand, trying to split that guard. And Izzy's got nowhere to go. He's as far as he can go into the corner of the cage, and Pereira's got him completely cut off. Izzy reaches for the clinch, and as he reaches, Alex counters with a hard left hook to the body again. I've said it over and over again. Every time there's a clinch initiation, Israel paid the price to the body, and that was the counter over and over here. There was no rest for Izzy, just constant pressure in every position. Now from here they clinch, and Izzy actually makes a mistake here. Instead of holding on and trying to ride out this round and keep the strikes to a minimum, he tries to separate and throw an elbow here, which doesn't connect. It misses, and it allows Pereira to separate and start to put the pressure back on him towards the fence again. Now, I get it in a way, because in the clinch he was eating body shots and knees anyway, so it's not a great spot either. But now with Alex back at distance, that gives him the openings to try to land a knockout, versus if Israel had held on to the clinch, he could have tied him up and possibly prevented the knockout. So Alex pushes in, pushes Israel towards the fence. Again, we're back in that corner of the cage again. Lands a jab to send him back, and Israel has nowhere to go up against that ring post, and Alex delivers a hard right hand, just a brutal shot over the top that Israel has to eat. Israel responds by trying to clinch, but Pereira's just having none of it and shoves that clinch away so he can get back to striking and look to end the fight. And now Israel's cornered on a really rough spot here up against the fence with Alex in close quarters, so all he can do is throw up his guard here, and Alex responds by splitting the guard with an uppercut that again just lands with a ton of power. Just another devastating shot that sends Izzy's head snapping back. From there, Pereira pursues by throwing a jab to the body on that same side that he's been attacking all fight here, and he's going to follow up here with the fight-ending shot, the left hook, which again, to remind you, is the shot that Israel has been trying to avoid all fights. But Pereira set this up with the combination of the jabs pushing him to the fence, cutting him off over and over again, the damage to the body in the clinch. He's just shut down so many of Israel's weapons that it led to this high pressure situation to where he throws his whole body into this left hook. It lands clean, and he actually throws it so hard here. Look at Pereira's head position. You can actually see him come up so high. It looks like he comes off his feet almost. He's just throwing his whole body into the shot. Just a brutal left hook. And from there, Izzy is just out on his feet essentially. You can see his line of sight looking this way. He's completely dazed. And he just eats a ton of shots here, right uppercut, and just a bunch of shots from here, a combination of hooks, uppercuts, right hands. He tries to clinch. Pereira shrugs it off, pushes him away, smells blood in the water, and just continues attacking. Nasty right hand there. That one really affected Izzy, hurt him bad. Another left hook, hits him more in the neck there, but brutal shots just over and over again. uppercut barely misses. And Izzy here is just, doing his best to survive. But a brutal right hand lands here as well. He can't do a whole lot, and, the referee has to step in. And I know that Izzy protested that stoppage, but in my opinion, I think it was a good stoppage. He was out on his feet. He wasn't defending himself intelligently, and he took some really brutal shots there. So in conclusion, this fight was a great chess match between these two and an amazing performance by Alex Pereira. He displayed incredible recovery ability coming back from the damage that he sustained at the end of round 1, as well as coming back from the grappling control that Izzy imposed on him throughout round 3. To come back from that and score a knockout over Izzy in round 5 is just a real testament to his heart, will, and elite skills. It was also extremely impressive how he dealt with Izzy's weapons and found solutions to them as the fight went on. As I said in the breakdown video, it's very difficult to be perfect for 25 minutes against someone like Alex Pereira, who has a unique combination of elite skills and devastating power. And I believe I heard during the pay-per-view that the broadcast team and Kenny Florian later said exactly the same thing. But it's true, when all your opponent needs is one little opening to end the fight, it's very, very difficult to compete against guys like that, especially when you are of equal skill level. It's still not an easy fight if the technician's a lot better than the guy with a lot of power, but it definitely gives them a better chance at being the matador and being able to avoid that power. But what I also referenced during the breakdown video is that in the strength and conditioning world in sports, when two athletes are of equal skill level, what is usually the deciding factor is strength and power. And with Israel Adesanya and Alex Pereira, they are neck and neck in terms of skill. So for me, the deciding factor, or at least the slightly deciding factor, was a lean towards Alex Pereira's size and power. But with that said, all the credit in the world to Israel Adesanya. He showed great skill and adaptations throughout the fight as well. And, he showed great heart and toughness still being on his feet at the end of that fight. He withstood so many brutal shots, and he went down temporarily there at the end, but he was still on his feet, when the referee stopped the fight. And that's just a testament to how tough he is. And he took some nasty shots throughout that fight too, taking those knees to the body and still landing takedowns and some of those hooks and straights that he absorbed early on in the fight, to keep going like he did and to keep firing back and to also turn the tides a couple times, which is amazing. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, let me know in a comment below and let me know what you would like to see in future videos, and I'll see you in the next one.